Welcome to my podcast, The Government Mechanic. I am your host, Dr. Lynn Sandra Kahn, and I am the Government Mechanic. This is episode 24, and I'm going to summarize the key points from the 7 episodes that we did about America's forgotten children, lost in foster care, or family court. I know this is painful stuff, and for some of you who might be in one of these situations, it might trigger some difficult reactions. I have listed at the end of each of these episodes and in the show notes for this episode resources where you can go if you find yourself in that situation. And I would start with Family Forward Project on Facebook. It's a good resource to start with. Okay, episode 24. So we did 7 episodes on this topic. Episode 17 highlighted Nashville author, public speaker, family rights activist Rachel Bruno, who had her own children taken by the state of California for not very important reasons. They were taken in 2015. She sued LA County and the state of California, and she won. And so 10 years later, she has the lived experience and the perspective to talk about the abuses in the child welfare system. Play the first clip.
I call my mom, like, what happened? And she said they showed up here at 2 o'clock in the morning with 3 police cars and walked into my house, woke David up, undressed him, looked for any signs of abuse, looked in the refrigerator, looked under the cabinets. Everything was fine, but then they look at me and say, "We're taking him." And my mom said, "No, you're not." And the social worker says, "If you don't give him to us, you're going to get arrested." 3 police officers right there. And my mom says, "If I go to jail, do I take him with me?" Like, no, he's going to go to foster care and you're not going to be able to care for him because you're going to have a criminal record.
Hmm.
So my son was seized at 2 o'clock in the morning, taken to who knows where. At this point, we had no idea. I start calling lawyers. I had to call about 10 different lawyers before I could find one who would deal with child protective services. Every lawyer is like, "Nope, I don't deal with that. Nope, I don't deal with that." Until I found one.
In the next episode, episode 18, we heard from another mother who had her child taken by the state while he was in the hospital dealing with childhood cancer. Roll the second tape.
Started a year that we will never forget, a year that has broken our family, but made us grow in ways that we could have never imagined just because we found the strength within us to make it through this. My son was kept in the hospital for 123 days straight, subjected to 14 rounds of chemotherapy. Then he had half of his leg amputated. And we were not allowed a second opinion because somebody who works for a state agency got to make the decisions on my son.
So both Rachel and Bailey during the longer episodes, and please watch on my channel, The Government Mechanic. In the longer episodes, they both talked about the financial incentives that go from the federal government to the states, and they only kick in when a child is removed from the home. And these incentives can be up to $8,000 a month or more for a child with special needs per child per month. So billions of dollars, billions and billions of dollars are going from the federal government to the states, and it only kicks in when the child is removed from the home. In a medical setting, in a hospital setting, this is sometimes called medical kidnapping. Play the next tape. Is medical kidnapping.
Well, it is when Child Protective Services takes a child from a family for medical kinds of reasons, a medical disagreement, a misdiagnosis, or one doctor says one thing and another doctor says another thing, or when they're using the children for medical experimentation.
We then listened to Connie Regularly, who is a family lawyer and an activist in this arena and is very experienced and knowledgeable about the issues facing families that are dealing with child protective services, and especially when they end up in family court. Play that tape.
Why would the government want to take children from families' homes over such minor issues and basically hold those children hostage as government captives with strangers? Why would they do that? That's what led me to start really digging in to what is the funding that is behind this and what do we need to know about the funding systems. That's when I found that our federal tax dollars put a price tag on every child's head, and that's why they end up in the state's custody.
So it's important to keep in mind that about 350,000 children are taken from their homes every year. Research shows that 87% are not taken for abuse, they're taken for neglect, which often has a lot to do with poverty and the interpretation or the whim of the caseworker. Are there enough cans of food in the pantry? Did they get the car fixed so they could get to medical appointments? And if the answer is no, not enough food, didn't get to the medical appointment, the children can be taken from that home, and they often are. And it is traumatic. There are never good outcomes, never good outcomes from being taken from a home where people care for you. And I think that's why people are so passionate about this issue. Um, let's play the next clip, which shows what happens when a parent whose child has been taken goes to family court.
Like, raise my hand even, can I say something in that first hearing to try to defend myself? And you're just not allowed to. There is no defense that you can have in the first hearing. And a lot of people, I don't know if it happened in every case, but for me, I didn't even have paperwork of the allegations by the time we got to the first hearing. I wasn't allowed a lawyer. I didn't even know what the allegations against me were. So there was no way that even trying to represent myself that first hearing, there would be no way that I would know what I was trying to defend, like what allegations were brought up against me in the first place. I think the family court system is just so
Warped was her final word. The family court system is warped and often abusive, certainly harmful. So then we did 2 episodes, episodes 21 and 22, where several of us got together and tried to look under the hood of the agency that has primary responsibility for children and families, and that's an agency inside the Department of Health and Human Services called the Administration for Children and Families, ACF. And, it's like it sounds right. The words about family reunification being important are there, but the data doesn't show that that is what's happening, and the data doesn't show there's no way to measure, there are no measures included about helping families with those everyday situations when they are incredibly poor and someone has their eye, the government eye, on how they treat their children at all times, 24/7. To my surprise, in some ways, because I was looking for what can we change about this agency, and then I think there are 2 things that could be changed. One is more of a budget for helping families in crisis out of a very specific financial difficulty, um, and measuring keeping families together, somehow figuring how to measure that. But what surprised me was that as important as it might be to get the right measures for this agency, listening to the parents and the people who've been active in this whole field for decades and decades, it's the legislation that has to change. It's the incentives, financial incentives to the tune of billions and billions of dollars going to states to take kids out of homes. That's what has to change. So then we added another little kind of related twist, not exactly the same, But we heard from David Schubert talking about parental alienation, which for him started with parental kidnapping of his children. Play the tape.
Or as the alienation that occurred afterwards, that's something there that is equally devastating, and what I tell parents is that, okay, they're depending on the length of time that it's gone through, the severity of it and everything else, it might take possibly weeks, it could take months, it could take years, it could take a lifetime before the child wakes up and realizes that what they've been taught about the other parent is not correct, that they've been being fed malicious lies in order to be turned away from the parent who really loves them because let's face it, the children are being used as nothing more than a tool of destruction to hurt the other parent for an act of revenge for a failed relationship. And that's not right.
So, in total, we're talking about millions and millions of children damaged by the foster care system and family court every year, or in total. So, we have millions and millions of children out there who had been traumatized, and their families and networks that they have equally traumatized, and they're angry. We wonder why people are angry out there. Well, this is certainly part of it, and it affects many more children and families than most people understand. So, as I've said, I know these are difficult issues. We have listed some resources on the bottom of our show notes. Two of them are rachelbruno.com and Connie's Family Forward Project on Facebook. Thank you.